Hey, spaceman. No, I'm not going to use Anchor. I don't do Anchor things. All right. I'll give this another couple of minutes to see if anyone else shows up, because I'm going to be starting. I'll be going raw here. I'm going to basically just add some custom links and actions on my personal website. Today's a day off, so I'm going to do code things that are related to exactly what I've been doing all week in the last 2 months, because why not? Should be fun. My goal here is to get like a single commit. That way I can like a single merge commit on my personal website to show what it looks like and all the changes that actually need to get made in order to add links and actions to your website to like enable them. My website currently does not have any like Solana functionality. So that's why I had to actually install those packages, because I just straight up just didn't have them. But now I have Solana things. Oh, did it not install? That was weird. Oh, there they are. Yeah, that was weird. Do the blinks unfurl on non-Twitter websites? Currently, no. Still only on Twitter, only on x.com for blinks to unfurl. Hopefully soon they'll start unfurling elsewhere, but I think there's probably going to be some other assorted changes that we want to push forward before trying to go out to other websites. We're trying to really hone in the experience for Twitter, and then make everything a little bit better, more compatible and friendly with wallets and things. So do you have to write a Blink client code to get your website to get it to work? So like that's like the whole magic of blinks and actions, is that you don't have to write the Blink client, so like the browser extensions. You just have to write the actions, have the actions.json to map your normal URLs to actions, and then you share that on Twitter or anywhere that blinks unfurl, and then it just works. You don't have to like do the client side, or you don't have to do like the Blink client stuff. Like the extensions do it, and that's the whole purpose of it being integrated within the wallets. So that way you don't have to actually like do that yourself. Everyone can use the exact same ones. I hope that answers your question. So like my personal website was added to the registry last night, so I could do this live stream to like show it unfurl once it's once these are live, once I like ship to production, and that way people will be able to just like use these two blinks. I'm gonna try to create two blinks, two actions. We'll see how that goes. One of them's gonna be really simple, and the other one's kind of like something I haven't seen anyone do yet, but I want it, so I'm gonna just build it myself. There's a question about what framework do I recommend. I personally love Next.js, which uses React. So my website's deployed using Vercel on the free plan because I'm cheap. But this is a Next.js website using App Router, and yeah. So it's funny. I have an actions directory with some code in here. This actually is not related to Solana Actions, but this newsletter idea is one of the things I'm going to try to build here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. This one is going to be donate. So like my goal here is I'm going to create 2 actions. The first one is going to be just a simple donate. Like that's like the simplest one, like tip me Sol. In this case, I'm just going to do native Sol. People will see like the buttons in order to actually use them. And the other one is an email newsletter sign up. So I have a personal email newsletter that I run through my website. The code is all within this repo, and I use resend to actually send the email. So it's all based off my markdown. I can just write markdown, and then I can do an email blast to everyone that's on my email list, all with custom code within this repo. So what I'm going to do, like right now on my website, if you go to like my website, which I can actually shift to show, but I'm using this restream thing, so it looks kind of weird. Here you go. So on my website, I have a newsletter sign up, which like, this is running it local, but it's nick.af. It's linked in my Twitter bio. But if I go to, my goal here is like, I have this email sign up flow where you just enter in an email address and then you get subscribed. I'm going to turn this into a blink. So that way people can enter their email address. It sends their email address to my API server, my action server, and then I can store that. They send a transaction. I verified that they sent a transaction, so that way it like connects the user's wallet address to an email address. I put those in my database and do like any validation I need to on those. Send like double opt-in emails and all that kind of good stuff. And then they've now subscribed to my email newsletter. So that's like the thing I'm going to build here as like the more complicated blink, which I think is fun. So I'm gonna switch back over to VS Code. There we go. Am I going to put a blink generator on my website? Not a generator. I'm just going to create 2 blinks. I'm building a tool that will have some assorted things. You've seen the screenshot, Spaceman. It's blinks.xyz. It's like an official Solana Foundation tool. You can go to it now. It doesn't have any of the functionality. It's basically just a landing page that links out to other places. But I'm probably going to add some sort of like generator tool into that at some point whenever I get time. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start this goodness here. So if anyone watching has not already seen what blinks and actions are, I'm gonna create 2. My get and my post here. I'm not good at multitasking and talking while typing. This is gonna be a JSON. So basically, this code is gonna look exactly like the code that's in the Next.js example within the Solana Actions SDK repo, because that's like, I wrote that too because I love using Next.js. So this is going to be an action get response. Yeah, response. So this is going to be the payload value that I'm going to return to make it so my blink will actually display. And fix my formatting, be reloading this. So if you look at the type here, this is just going to be a very simple one to start. So I'm just going to grab these. So icon, title, description, label. The icon is just going to be, it has empty string for now. I'm going to use the just normal icon for my website. Maybe even my face, picture of my face, probably not. Someone asked, is this live stream going to be uploaded to my X page? I don't know if you can upload. I mean, it'll be accessible through my like X Twitter profile. Like you'll be able to always access this. I'll probably upload this to my personal YouTube as well. I'm going to start creating more Solana developer content on my personal YouTube, which if you go to my website, it's all linked there. Nick.af is the website. Also linked in my Twitter bio. Let's do something simple. Donate to me. I don't like that. I'm going to do buy me a coffee because I love coffee, actually. Oh, I'm all out of coffee. Close this. And the last thing you need here is a title. And like many of you have come to realize, you need to make sure you set your correct headers. So there's a helper, some helper code within, helper constant within the Actions SDK called Actions CORS headers. This is a headers init type. So if you're using a normal, if you're using like Next.js in the response, this is the value that this is the type for that. I've noticed a lot of people are using, yeah, Spaceman, exactly. I came here to write blinks about getting coffee, and I'm all out of coffee. My cup's upstairs. I'm in my basement. I'm in my office. But yeah, this constant's in here, so it gives these headers if you're using like Next.js. But I've noticed a lot of people are using Express and Fastify, and they're basically the same thing, except Express is more optimized. Or sorry, Fastify is more optimized. Express is pretty bloated. But the way you do CORS headers within those looks a lot different. So I'm actually probably going to add a constant in here for those common CORS headers so people can stop rewriting the same ones. And I've noticed people get like, kind of get them wrong in some cases. So I'm going to add some helper functions within the Solana Actions SDK or helper constant in order to actually like get it there, make it a little bit easier for people. It's like my whole goal. I want things to be easier for people. I'm going to go ahead and grab the URL for this. And this is going to be the request. What is this? This is I'm gonna do a double nested URL, since some lovely person hyper optimized the URL constructor within Node.js, so it's like way faster because they rewrote it in C. Amazing optimization. It was so cool. This is, what is this? This is the request.url, but that's just a string URL. So now I can grab the origin. So that way it gives me the actual like website that's being requested. So in this case, this will work on like localhost. I don't want this. This will work on localhost 3000 or whatever port you're on, but then it'll also work on like your production URL, whatever URL that this is being accessed from. This will make it so you always get an actual value that will load. But I got to figure out what image I'm going to load. Where's this? Maybe this one. That's not it. That's not the right icon. That's the old sulfate icon. This one, this one, this one. All right. I guess I'm just going to do my face. So what is that? That was image/nic.jpg. JPG. Is that what it was? Yeah. Cool. Now I have an image. And in fact, I am going to open up dial.to so I can test this locally. So I have my local server running here. I now have this, at least the get response for my action. And I can, oh, it looks like VS Code stopped showing, which is interesting. But I'm going to switch over to dial.to. Can you guys see my screen on the screen share? Okay, maybe I need to stop screen sharing. It seems to stop the screen share for me. There we go. Okay. Yeah, here's dial.to. I am going to actually I don't want you to see my autofill in case it leaks anything for all the random things I do. But within dial.to, you can here we go. There we go. Within dial.to, you can use localhost. So you can see my URL is localhost. Right now, if you just enter in this localhost URL on dial.to, if you're running your server locally, I don't think it automatically does this, which actually we should probably get that fixed. But you can like manually specify this. And also to note that if you're in Brave, you don't see the pop-up. And if you're in Brave, you need to turn shields down in order to be able to actually see this. But once you see it, you can see that, or once you turn shields down, you can actually use the localhost here. And you can see here's all the text that I put in there. And then if I click this, it's not going to do anything except for try to get me to connect a wallet because I haven't done it on this computer. Sure, I'll do Phantom. And okay, close that. So now I have the get. I can now create my actual action. I'm going to switch back over to VS Code. I need to figure out a better way to make this switching easier. There we go. So there's VS Code. So yeah, someone said that they've been writing their headers manually. Yeah, it's baked into the Actions SDK for that reason, because you have to have like very specific headers kind of set, or else it doesn't work. And also to note, like, some people will set the headers, especially this is like a big thing I've noticed, the access control allow origin. You set it to star for your actions.json and all of your action API routes. So in this case, I have this route that is /API/action/donate. This will have allow origin of all. Don't set allow origin for your entire website unless the entire domain that you are publishing your Blinks and Actions code to. If you're only publishing to a single dedicated domain, then this is fine to do because it's the only thing there is Actions. But if you have anything else on your website, don't set this globally on your entire website, because then your entire website basically will allow any request from any client. So any other website can make requests to it, and that's like a security thing. Don't do that. Only set this for the specific routes that you are using for Actions and Blinks. So you have your API routes, and then you have your Action JSON. Those are the only routes that you should set these specific headers for, unless you need other custom headers for whatever else you're doing. My screen share also says it stopped again for VS Code at least, so that's fun. I'll try it again. All right. Hopefully that stays. I don't know why it keeps like appearing to crash on me. But yeah, so now I have the get. So I'm going to build the post response. Well, I'm going to make my options response, because in order to actually be able to use CORS, you need to have an options response. So if you're using Next.js like I am, you can just return the exact same thing for your options, because you have the header set here, you have a value. The value doesn't actually matter. It's just the headers. But you could do one line and then add everything in to make it work. All right. So now to build this actual action, what I like to do is wrap the entire thing in a try-catch, because you're going to take user input here. You're inherently required to take user input. So the user input you're going to grab is from the request body, and that's actually going to give you the it's actually going to give you the user's wallet address in order to actually sign the get the user's wallet address that should sign the transaction. So I like to do it this way. So I create a body, and then I will then try to parse it as JSON. And that way, if I wrap everything in a try-catch, it will make it so I can always return a valid response instead of getting like a 500 error on the server, which is what will happen if you deploy this without like proper error handling. And especially if you're using like Vercel, you'll just get a 500 error and you get like a really bad experience. So I'm going to return a action error, I think is the type. Identifier error, fetch action error. I don't remember what it is. I'll just check. It's somewhere in here, types. Yeah, action error. Where's this? Yeah. I thought it was action error. Maybe I typed actions error. Oh, it doesn't want to find it. Weird. I'll just import that. You can basically return an actions error with the correct headers in order to actually have your message be displayed to the user, which is really fun. So if you set a message here, this will be the actual error message displayed to the user within the Blink client, so dial.to, or if you're on Twitter, you can do that. And when I do errors in this way, I like to throw errors that are plain strings. So that way it's like my own custom errors without having to like give a type. So if I do a type of error equals string, seems to be like, There we go. So what I like to do is if I throw errors, I'll throw an error as a plain string instead of an actual like new error class. And I like to do that because it makes it so I can do this a little bit easier. So I can just return the error itself. So I'll set a default error message of like, you know, some random thing happened, unknown, who knows. But then if the type of the error is a string, instead of it being an instance of the error class, I can then just say return that specific string message to the user. So that way I can just like easily throw errors whenever I have any other problems. So yeah, that's what I like to do. So now that I have the body, this out, we'll do a JSON. Do a JSON, and then this will be the action get request. So if you look at this, oh, sorry, this should be not get request, get. This should be a post request. So the post request returns or provides the user's account address, but you still need to validate that that account address is real. So I like to throw in a try catch and basically try to parse that value as a pub key, because it should be a base 58 encoded pub key. And I will set this as let account equals public key. Typing's hard when you're trying to talk. This is just how my brain works to code for some reason. It just is. But then I can, using this, I can just say this equals a new public key, and then I can pass in the body.account. So this value that gets provided from the user, from the client input during the post request body, I can attempt to parse it as a valid pub key. If it's not a valid pub key, it'll throw an error. And instead of throwing like the pub key error that gets thrown from this, which is like kind of hard to understand sometimes, I can then just throw a specific custom error of this like plain string, which then gets returned as the message for the user. So invalid account provided. It's not a real pub key. So like realistically, you should never hit this, but because it's an open API that anyone can make those requests to, they could try to spam your endpoint or something and give you like bad data. So you should always like do this. But if you're using like the happy path of using like dial.to or like browser extensions or anything, they'll always submit a valid pub key because you've connected, unless they have like a bug for some reason. They're not giving you a real value, but they should. So now I'm just going to build a transaction. This is just going to be a legacy transaction from Web3.js. I'm going to set the fee payer as the account, because now I know this account is a valid pub key, and when this transaction gets returned to the user, it's expected that the user will sign it. So fee payer, they're going to sign the transaction, and since this is like a donate, tip me a coffee sort of thing, then be able to use that. And actually, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and create my response payload. And I'm going to use the helper function within the Actions SDK, which is create post response. And you can use this helper function in order to correctly like build your transaction, sign it, and get the full payload you need in order to actually send it to be spec compliant. So that way it can be properly handled by the clients. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. And there we go. I'll remove this. And this payload is actually supposed to be an action post response. Post response. If I could type, so this is going to be a post response, which is why you're creating a post response using this helper function. And I like to type this like this instead of throwing the await in here. So you can do any extra error handling you need on this await. But yeah, actually, I think Spaceman, you brought this up the other day to me that this is listed as an async function, but doesn't actually need to be. And I have not updated the SDK for that. So I should probably do that. So for right now, it's you gotta async await it. Someone asked for Solana Actions had an SDK, Blink SDK. Yeah, there is. I think I actually have a thing here. This is the Solana Actions SDK. So it's at Solana/Actions. You can install it from your favorite NPM tool locally and into your like repos and whatnot. This is how you build actions. And then this has some stuff that helps you build the blinks, which are effectively like the UI side of it. The actions are the API backend, the blinks are the UI front end, which the blink UI front end stuff, like I was mentioning the Spaceman earlier, is like when you're building actions and blinks, you don't need to build any of that, with basically the two exceptions of correct CORS headers, and then you need an actions.json at the root of your domain, which I haven't gotten to yet, which I'll add in here in a couple of minutes. But if you have those two things, your website, you can just make it so you share the link to your website, and that if it's on that'll allow it to correctly unfurl and render that UI on x.com. And that's like the whole purpose there. Okay, so now I have this payload, and I'm actually going to include a success message in here. And I'll say, thanks for the coffee. And everyone's a friend to me. Friends or buddies. It's everybody. Thanks, Bank. Here we go. Got the NPM package there. Nice. All right, so I'm going to finish building this transaction. So because this transaction is going to be super, super simple, I am actually, I'm just transferring native Sol. Currently, this, actually, I can just do it in here. Because you just need to add a single instruction, I'm going to add a system instruction for transfer. Or no, it's not system instruction. It's system program dot transfer as the instruction. And then I can use this basically helper function that's within Web3.js to build a very simple transfer. So I can allow the user to, whoever's interacting with the blink, they can just immediately transfer Sol to whatever wallet I set. So the from pub key is going to be the account, and that's the account that is provided from the user. The LAN ports will be some number, and then the to pub key will be a constant that I need to declare. I will set this as something. Let's see. Actually, I'll just keep this simple. I'm just going to use my public wallet address, but I don't have it off the top of my head. So I'm going to the Explorer. There we go. There we go. And this will be my to address. And that's just my nickfrosty.sol. GM Miguel. And then I guess for this, I'll just say, I'll do 0.1 Sol. So got to do the math, LAN ports per Sol. And then what else do we need? Base pub key, we need program ID. And this, I don't know why you actually have to include this dot program ID. Is that what it wants? Does it want something else here? What's this type? No options. That's fields deprecated. LAN ports number. Oh, I see what happened. I did a silly thing. That should not go in there. This should go inside of the .add because I want to add this instruction. There we go. Satisfied. I should be able to remove that. Yeah. System program uses the system program ID. Who would have thought? All right. So now I need to actually get a block hash. Actually, I'll do the easy way to do this. I'm going to need to create a connection object for one, which I actually don't think that this repo has a connection, has an RPC. So I'm going to need to grab an RPC. So for now, I'll just use devnet, and then I can switch that to mainnet later. So connection equals new connection. And I can never remember them, so I always use the cluster API helper, and we'll do devnet. So now I have a connection. I'm going to get the latest block hash, and I'm going to grab the block hash. Set my recent block hash. So now I have effectively a valid transaction that if I send this to the user, or if someone interacts on like dial.to right now, I mean, it's on localhost, but if someone interacts with this, then they'll get a very simple transaction to transfer some sol, 0.1 sol in this case, from whatever their wallet address is that gets submitted into this wallet address, which is mine, which is actually the one I have connected to dial.to. So we'll check that in just a second. But the first thing I like to do, especially when doing locally, and I'm building a tool to help with this, but I haven't published it yet. It'll be published hopefully today or tomorrow or something. I'm going to make a post request. I'm going to use like Postman style like requests to actually test this to make sure I'm getting valid data back. So that way it helps with troubleshooting. So I'm going to grab my endpoint here. I'm going to make a post request. If I hit send, see I have this unknown error occurred. And that is because we're not actually sending any data to the user. So if I send that, now because this becomes JSON, this will actually give an actual error. So that's happening right here because this is assuming that I'm getting JSON from the client. So a better, safer way to do this would be take this in as text and then handle the, like, individually handle the JSON request. I'm not super concerned about that. We'll get a less good error message. I might clean that up later. But by sending in an object, I can manually pass in any account address here. In fact, I will just copy and paste this one for simplicity. You can hit send, and you can see now I have this transaction that can be base64 transaction that can be properly handled on the for the client on the client side. So, fun fact, you can actually use the block explorer, so the Solana Explorer. You can copy this entire base64 transaction, and then if I switch screen sharing over to the Explorer, you can see I'm here on the Explorer. I'm on mainnet. It's not really going to matter. Oh, that's not where I want it. You can go to this inspector tab, and you can paste in the base64 transaction, and then you can actually like inspect the transaction to make sure that it actually works or should work wherever you're at. So you can see here, single signature. It's currently set to all ones because the user has not signed, because this wallet address, the fee payer that I sent in the body of the post request, they're going to sign it. So they're set to a fee payer. They're set as a signer. They should sign it. They have not signed it, so it's all ones right now. So basically, it's a null signature. And then there's only one account listed here because effectively I'm sending to myself. And then you see there's one system program instruction, which if you expand it, you can see that we are just performing this one instruction within it. You can see whatever fees were paid, if you had priority fees or anything. You can even simulate it if you want. And this returns success because this wallet has DevNet Sol, has mainnet Sol and DevNet Sol, so it should work. Yeah, fun fact there. Now I'm going to hop over to dial.to. I can refresh this page. It's going to look exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and connect my wallet. You can't see my wallet. I'm going to connect with that same wallet address, so the GQUI, that's my nickfrosty.sol. So I can now click this button, and you still says executing. That's the only thing you see. But I get the full transaction pop-up, and I'm actually getting an error, no balance changes, because my wallet is connected to mainnet, or selected to mainnet instead of DevNet, which is the, where's this? Developer settings, testnet mode, Solana DevNet. Okay, so now I can click this again, and I actually get a transaction that is sending funds back and forth to myself, basically, which is fun. And in fact, I set up a Squads wallet. Shout out to Squads. I set up a Squads wallet the other day for doing this exact thing. So I'm actually going to use that Squads wallet. So I'm going to update my code, which I guess I'll switch back over to VS Code. I need to figure out a better screen sharing situation here, because I'm using Restream. It's an amazing tool, but there we go. I'm going to switch over to that address. So now if I make this request again, you can see this value has changed because I'm actually not sending Sol from myself to myself. I'm sending it from myself to a different wallet. So now if I inspect this transaction on the Explorer, switch back, go back to the inspector, paste it in, you can see that this GQUI is still the signer, but now there's another account that is writable because I'm transferring Sol to it, native Sol. This was it 9FK, and then I can simulate this. You know, I have Sol in this wallet, so it would go through if the user had signed, which I haven't signed yet because I haven't done that. But now on, oh, that's not showing. But now on dial 2 interstitial, I have this GQUI set. I am selected to DevNet in my wallet. I have DevNet Sol. I can now click this. I get a transaction that should work. I can try hitting confirm. See it spinning. I've confirmed it in my dialog, in my transaction pop-up. So we'll see if this actually goes through. This actually probably won't go through because I realize I'm not selected to DevNet on dial 2. So it's trying to confirm this on mainnet. So if you actually look at, 429, funny. Yeah, this isn't going to actually confirm. But if I go to the Explorer, you can see if it actually went through on DevNet. Spaceman's got a question if you can get the transaction ID before the user signs it. No, by definition, that's impossible to do because the transaction ID is actually the signatures array. It's index 0. That is a transaction ID. That's just like how the transaction ID works on Solana. So it's quite literally impossible to get the transaction ID before the user has signed it, unless you are pre-signing on your server. So if you are like partially signing because you have some sort of need to like partially sign on your server, because you have partially signed it, you will be able to actually get the transaction ID out of there, and then you can do any like confirmation logic you want. As a stopgap for that, what you could do is you could inject a reference key. So you can add a random, like randomly generated nonce style value, generate a new random key pair, use the public key for that, put that in the transaction, and then you can do get signatures for address for that particular transaction. And then and then you can like confirm it on your backend logic. That's like the best way you can do that. What you need for the transaction is, you're saying bank, need to get the transaction signature returned from the URL. You mean specifically when doing blinks or like anything on Solana? Can you clarify that? All right, I think this is, I'm trying to remember the dialect page for DevNet. Use DevNet. Okay. I'm going to adjust this. So the transaction, I checked on the Explorer. It did actually confirm, but I'll do it again. I'll confirm, and it should actually confirm now because I'm selected to DevNet. You might, actually, can you see the URL? You can't actually see my URL. In my URL, I am using dial.2 on DevNet. You can see the DevNet text right here. And now the transaction actually completed because it was able to actually confirm on DevNet. If I switch over to the Explorer for my wallet, here we go. You can see here on the Explorer, this was the first one that went through. And if I refresh this, actually, now there's the second one that went through. So the first one did go through. It just dial2 didn't confirm it because it was trying to confirm on mainnet, which this is on DevNet. So now I have my very first action. It's a completely working action, and well, working on DevNet, and people could send me 0.1 Sol on with a blink. So you're saying the user still wouldn't sign until the payload's sent to them, which at the same time the message is yes, that's correct. So like you won't get unless you're pre-signing on your server, you won't get a transaction ID until the user signs it. But currently with Solana Actions and Blinks, there's no like callback mechanism to say like, hey, this transaction is confirmed on whatever cluster you're selected to, you know, make a callback to your API, your action API, to like handle any logic you need for that. That's not part of the spec now. That might change. There's some interesting things that you could do with that for sure, but it does add some complexity to how the Blink clients need to do things. Especially if you want to have like ideally some amount of like retry logic. So not currently supported. The best thing you could do is kind of like I was describing, doing the reference key sort of thing by injecting your own reference key. That's probably the easiest thing to do. I need to grab a mainnet RPC URL. Actually, I'll just do this one. All right, switching back into VS Code. Close Discord, getting Discord pop-ups. All right, there we go. So just for some clarity, this is the actual, this was the URL I was looking at. So I'm on dial 2. I was on, that showed like the actual like Blink UI on dial 2. I was selected to not DevNet initially, so I was trying to confirm on mainnet using my localhost action. But then once I selected it to DevNet, it would actually confirm. And notice that I am using my localhost here, so it does actually work. So having a static action here of 0.1 sol is nice, but maybe someone wants to donate more, someone wants to donate less. So I'm actually going to add in multiple actions. So I'm going to add in the links attribute and then actions. And then this should be an array of objects. And I can pass in new individual actions that can be displayed as multiple options for anyone who sees it. So you need an href and a label at a minimum. And it looks like Restream decided to rug on VS Code again, or at least for me. There we go. Yeah, so I'm going to add in this custom one. So I'm going to point back to myself here. So I'm using this API actions donate. I'm going to use the exact same one. If you start it with a single slash, that's a relative link, and the blinks will handle that. So I can just do this action slash donate, and I'm going to do a query parameter of amount. Yeah, we'll do amount. And I'm going to set this as a template literal. So wrapping this in curly brackets, this becomes a template literal. So if I wanted to pass in a value from the user, this would make it so I can do that swapping. So now I can have multiple actions that can kind of do the same thing almost. So that's how I'm going to structure this. So I'm going to have a couple of actions here. I'll do 3. This first one is going to be 0.1 sol, and I'm going to manually pass in this amount of 0.1, and then I'll do a 0.5 and a 1.0. And then this last one, I'm going to take a user input so the user can actually manually type in a sol value. And that's what this is going to do. So we use the template literal there. So this was 0.5 and this was 1.0. And then so in order to take user input, so like actually right now, if I switch over to dial 2, I will switch dial 2. If I refresh this page, if I refresh this page, now there are 4 buttons that are being displayed, the 0.1, 0.5, and 1.0 sol, and this last one is test, because I haven't declared this last one to be a text input. So if you declare it as text input, you'll see that actually rendered on the page, and making it so people can actually make that particular request. All right, so, and I still need to parse that. But in order to actually make it so this can become an input, is you can pass the parameters, and this is a array of what inputs you want. And how this is gonna work is you set the name of the value that's going to be replaced. So in this case, this is basically the name of your template literal. So my template literal is bracket amount bracket curly brackets. So it's going to basically replace this amount with the value that gets input from this. And then if you set a label on here, this will actually be the placeholder text. So this will be the Yeah, so this is the button text. This is the name for the template. And this will be the placeholder text for the input itself. So enter a SOL amount. And I'll just put submit here, I guess, or send. Send SOL, we'll do that. So now, now that I've saved that, if I switch back over to dial 2, go to see it. See, I don't know if it's reverse, this restream thing is kind of rugging me or not, or if it's just me. So if I refresh, you now have this text input. You have send SOL, enter a SOL amount. So you have the placeholder text and you have the button text that you actually want. So now if someone was to click these buttons, in theory, it should pick one of these particular amounts of SOL to actually send the donation or send like the tip to buy the coffee. But we have to actually handle that logic of handling whatever amount. So now that we know that we have this amount query parameter, if we get this out of the URL, we can actually parse that and handle any logic we need to around that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the full URL of the request itself, and I'm going to convert it to a URL object. So within Next.js, you can do it like this. So this is a string value that the request is being made to, which includes all the query parameters. But if you parse it as a URL using the URL constructor, you now have a URL object or a URL class, and you can have all of the access to all the query parameters. So that way we can validate the amount. So we'll do a quick validation of the amount here. So I'm going to set this to a default value, which is 0.1. And yeah. And then basically I'm going to check to see if the query parameter does exist. So it's search parameters dot has is what it is. And since we're looking for the amount search parameter, which is coming in from right here, we're going to look for this amount value. And if it has the amount, then we're going to grab it. Actually, I'm going to make this a number for simplicity later. So we're going to grab this amount, doing basically the same thing. We're going to get it, and this is either going to give us a string or not. And then what we can do is we can actually validate that it's actually a number, because someone could pass in any arbitrary value. So you could wrap it in a try catch. That typing was weird. In this case, I'm going to throw an error if it does not parse as a number. So that way you give like some sort of helpful information back to the user. So it was this parse number, parse float, yeah. Which actually I can simplify this. So if the user provides a value that's not parsable as a number, so if they provide no value, it's going to default to 0.1, which is our default SOL amount. So it's the lower of all the options. If they provide a bad number, it's going to throw this error. And I'm just going to say invalid number input or invalid amount. Actually remove this. And now that we have this amount, we can actually replace it here. And so now the actual amount that the user is going to like send using the blink is going to be dynamic based off of whatever either we statically set as the value in our actions up here, or if they follow the template literal and enter in an amount that gets sent as the query parameter, and then we now have dynamic amount. And that's basically it. So you can see if we test this again, we have a transaction. So if I want it, so this is going to default to that. In fact, let me adjust this a little bit just to show. Where is it? So now if we make this request again, you can see it default to 0.1. And then if we pass in any amount, we can put in 2. It's going to attempt to parse it again. But if someone passes in something that's not a number, so if they pass in letters, the amount gets, it doesn't actually get a valid amount. And then we actually return an error to the user. So, yeah. Although that shouldn't be the error that we get. Amount is NA. I think that little hack will fix that. Yeah. So it's always going to give them an amount now, no matter what. So if they provide a not a real value, it's going to give them an actual amount in the end. Yeah. So I can go ahead and remove this. So now we actually have, like, we've built a fully working action. In this case, it's just on DevNet, but I can just switch this RPC URL to get a mainnet block hash, and then the same thing will work. The user gets a transaction assigned. We now have an action. Pretty easy. Not a whole lot of code. Right now, it's basically contained in this one single file, plus my adding these 2 packages for the Actions SDK and Web3.js. So that's the action side of it. If you want this action to be able to automatically unfurl on places like Twitter, x.com, to actually like show, what you have to do is you actually have to set up your actions.json. So the actions.json is a file that it's a JSON file that must be accessible at the root of the domain. And the way that I like to create it within Next.js is I create a route TS file. Oh, if I spelled JSON right. I create a route JSON file, or route TS within a actions JSON folder. So that makes it so at the root of my domain, since it's the app directory, actions.json will become the file that's accessible. Because the thing you have to note is that CORS headers, again, CORS headers, your actions JSON file needs to be accessible to the entire internet. It needs a very permissive allow access controls, or CORS access controls. So within Next.js, I like to set it this way. That way I can also dynamically generate my action JSON if I needed to. There's not really any need to here, but I can make it so I set, it makes it so I can set the correct headers, just like you do with the get response. So I'm going to cheat here a little bit, and I'm going to copy and paste in all of the, some of this code logic here. There we go. And there's a type that comes from the Actions SDK, and I can actually set my rules that I want to actually handle my mappings. So this is API path, that's a string, and then there's the path pattern. If I could type, path pattern, also a string. So I can actually, so like right now, if I was to, I don't need this anymore. Right now, if you need to actually set like whatever you're going to have here. So you set your path pattern. This is basically like your local route that you want to be able to share on the internet to then unfurl to access your action API. So we created the action API. We now need to declare what route should be rendered, should like handle and allow the unfurling. If that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Got a question. Yeah, so like Spaceman was saying, circling back to the webhook idea in callbacks. Yeah, something like a webhook would probably be the easiest, using any platform that supports them. You add a reference key, and then you add a webhook. You like whatever your RPC provider is, give them tell them you want to watch that wallet address for any transactions that come in. If you're doing like a stateless server, like a REST API typically is, then you can then handle any logic you need to off of that. And then a few minutes off, you think, but more saying the blanks to take off, return data after the payload, like a transaction signature, contract response, on-chain key. Yeah, so it sounds like, yeah, that's like the idea of the callback. So it's like when after the user submits the transaction, it gets confirmed. You're basically saying you want a response back to your server to handle whatever you want. You want to make sure that it worked or whatever. That's what a callback is. So if you don't have callbacks, just like Spaceman's doing, you could do a webhook, which effectively gives you a callback from your RPC provider or any service you want. If you're handling like specifically on-chain logic, like tracking a transaction signature, specifically because you don't have a transaction signature, you can't get a callback you can't do a webhook or a callback on the transaction signature. But if you insert a reference key, like a nonce reference key, just generate a fresh random key pair, throw in that public key as a non-signer, and then you can do get signatures for address on that reference key, and then you can get the transaction that way. Bank asked if the public folder is good as well, right, for the actions JSON. Yes and no. So like I was saying, the actions JSON must be accessible with correct CORS headers, specifically the access control, allow origin, all, because you need to be able to, like any of the browser extensions or anyone who supports Blinks needs to be able to make requests to it. Because browser extensions are client-side only, they effectively are making requests without having a domain associated to them. Because that they need a star in order to actually access these routes, like the actions JSON. So if you just put a static actions JSON inside your public folder, where's mine? Inside your public folder here, just like you have your robots.txt, this file, this robots.txt, does not allow access via CORS, so it would actually reject requests. So if you put it inside of here, you can, but you need to also set up like middleware to allow setting the correct headers. I think you can do it with you can definitely do it with like regular Next.js middleware, and I think you can also do it with what's it called? With like the Next.js config. I think you can do it with the config, but you could probably also do it with like if you're using Cloudflare as your DNS, you could probably set like a DNS record that injects it. Or not DNS record, but you could do like some of the Cloudflare functionality to inject the headers. But that's like less clean, which is why I think for Next.js specifically, this is hands down, like this looks the cleanest to me, which is why I personally recommend it. Yeah, I've been using the public folder. Would love for you to check your example. Yeah, feel free to send me a DM with your example, and I'll check it with the tool that I'm building, which hopefully will go live today or tomorrow. Then anyone will be able to check it, but I'd be happy to take a look at it. But yeah, just feel free to send it to me in a DM, or even better, post it publicly on Twitter and let other people look at it too. Okay, let's finish up this action JSON so I can actually have a blink. So this particular blink is. Can remove some of these. This particular blink, I haven't quite decided where I want it to be accessible, or like what links I want people to be able to share to show it, because my website has Open Graph metadata, so you get like the social media cards and stuff. And because of how the differences between Open Graph and blinks, if you have any Open Graph metadata, that's basically ignored if you render a blink, so they don't see that. And I also don't want every single link to my personal website to always be rendered as a blink. Like maybe it's just a link to an article or something. I might add the ability to like mint articles as NFTs. Like that's a super, when you have something like this, you can actually do it incredibly easily. But either way, my API path is going to be that donate. So I'm going to do API/action/donate here. And that way, any link that gets shared that follows this path pattern will always map to this. So I think I'll just do /now. So like on my personal website, here, I'll go ahead and open it. On my personal website, so basically how this is going to work, I think I have to cancel this. So, oof, we're an hour in. I think I have a call soon. So on my personal website here, there is, I have this now page, which shows, it's just like, my website is nick.af. It's linked in my Twitter description, Twitter bio, whatever you want to call it. But I have this /now page that shows like what I'm working on right now. I've got DevRel Foundation and then like Sulfate podcast. So I'm going to make it so if someone shares a link to this, it will show this donate. So in order to do that, how that's going to work is if I switch back over to VS Code, there we go. So here, if I set my path pattern, this is like the local path of your website. If someone shares my website /now, the blink will check your actions JSON if it can access it because you have correct CORS headers. It will then map this /now to my donate API action. So then it makes the GET request to my action API, which returns all this information, which then makes it so you can show those buttons and the text input, just like I showed on Dial 2. But this makes it so I can share a link to my normal website instead of just sharing a Dial 2 website link. That's the whole purpose of the actions JSON. So you have both options in order to become a blink, to become a true blink. You have actions JSON on your website, so you can map your website URLs to action API endpoints, or you have a service, an interstitial service like Dial 2 that accepts that action query parameter that can then be mapped to an action API endpoint because that has it inside the query parameter. Like that. Restream does not like my screen sharing. That, where is it? This API endpoint here. So it has action, the Solana action URI, and this is my action API endpoint. You have basically those two options to have this unfurl and render as a blink on Twitter or anywhere else blinks are supported in the future. That's like how that works. Awesome. Thanks. Awesome. Thanks to you. Can a blink be refreshed on the fly to get fresh content after the interaction? Sadly, no. That's not something that's implemented right now. But yeah. Oh, yeah. Spaceman beat me to it. Shout out to Spaceman. He posted a SRFC on the forum that talks about this idea of blink chaining, action chaining. Whole bunch of details in there. Take a look at it. Still an open discussion. I am personally for the idea of it. I would like it. It could unlock a lot of interesting use cases of like what could be done here. I'm going to go ahead and stage all these. Actually, I'm going to remove that. The quick double check. /now donate. Yeah. So I'm going to stage all these changes. So these are all the changes that happen. This one commit will demonstrate, I'll call this first actions. This one commit on my website will now, once it deploys, it will now make it so anytime someone shares the link to my website /now, it'll render as a blink on Twitter. So since I have to go in just a couple of minutes, I'm gonna see if this actually builds really quick before I have to bounce. It's for sale, so it deploys pretty quick. Question is, how fast is it gonna go? Let's see if I did this right. I'm gonna open x.com, make sure there's nothing that you might see. And I'm gonna, once this deploys, I'm going to immediately try to post it. I need to switch my screen share though. We're gonna see if it works. That's not what I want. Screen share is really getting me, really tripping me up. Okay, go ahead and close that. So now, if I copy this link, let's see, is for sale done deploying? It's not quite done. It's still generating. It's almost done. We're going to see if this works. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen share to this. So I just pulled up, this is the actions JSON route on my website. You can see it doesn't show anything yet because the website's not, the fresh deployment's not live, so it's the 404 page. But as soon as this deploys and this file is accessible, the blink should work because my domain, nick.if, has been added to the registry. So that way it's like on the registry so it can be auto unfurled on Twitter. Almost deployed. Just waiting on Vercel now. Vercel says it was deployed. Let's see if it goes. There we go. So I have an actions JSON, should be accessible. So now, if I switch to Twitter, where'd it go? So now on Twitter, had to find the link. I just made this DevNet only. I would say DevNet Solana Action. So now if I share that link, we'll see if it actually unfurls. Survey says, looks like it's a no. This also might be because the website, the domain for the registry might be cached locally. It hasn't gotten the fresh cache. Look, you can see I'm streaming. You can see me streaming while I'm streaming. All right, well, I have to go. But yeah, so that's all the code. I'll post a link to the actual commit for this, so you can see like the git diff in order to see what it looked like in order to actually build the action, and like how it's like all the code you need to add. And then the Blink itself, once the registry refreshes in like my local cache, then it should start rendering. But until then, I might just have to manually clear the cache myself. But I don't know how to do that. So I hope people found this helpful. If anyone has any questions on Blinks and Actions, feel free to send me a DM. In fact, it's even better if you tag me on Twitter. And if you send me a DM or tag me and ask me a question, I'll probably just tell you, I'll ask you to post your question on the Stack Exchange, solana.stackexchange.com. And then feel free to send me the link to the Stack Exchange, and then I'll answer it there. But until next time, hope everyone enjoyed this, and bye-bye.